when Edouard Mendy managed to go from being 24 years old, unemployed, awaiting a child and living off of benefits, to being a multi-millionaire Champions League winner in a matter of 6 years, I knew I had to get to the bottom of how it all happened, and so, here's that story just for you. Enjoy the video. The year was 1999 and a 7-year-old Edouard had joined the Le Havre Academy, from which talents like Pogba, Payet and Mahrez would eventually come. It seemed like at this point the world of football was his to conquer, but destiny would not be so kind, and by 2005, as he turned 13 years old, another boy would beat him in the race for the role of main goalkeeper. Edouard was utterly depressed. It might have been impulsive to feel like that, but in a way, it seemed the dream was over. By the time he turned 19, he finally turned pro, if you could even call it that. Edouard was now playing in the 4th tier of French football for a club named Cherbourg. It wasn't exactly the tippy top of the football world, but at least, right on his first year they achieved promotion, despite Edouard not getting to play a single match. After 2 unremarkable seasons, the tale of his career had only gotten more depressing as Cherbourg would go back to the 4th tier. This enabled Edouard to get some more playing time, but by the end of the season, his contract expired and he was dropped. At first it seemed fine, he even rejected a few approaches from other lower league clubs. After all, his agent had told him he had a move set up for him to join a club in the English League One. But out of nowhere, the agent was gone. Not a word from him. Edouard called him over and over again and the only thing he got back was silence. Until something even worse came, a text only to wish him good luck for the future. I guess we all know what that meant, especially given the fact that by then the transfer market had closed. Edouard tried hustling his way back into the game, traveling to England several times, setting up trials with lower league clubs, but the answer was the same every time. No one was interested. Mendy grew increasingly worried. The time was counting down and soon his employment check wouldn't be enough to provide for his household. He and his girlfriend were expecting a baby boy. As duty called, Edouard had to do what he had to do. The dream was left behind and he went looking for a regular job. A whole year went by, he ran around the neighborhood trying to keep in shape, but every day, his inner fire grew colder and colder, and as the last flames began to dim, an unexpected phone call came. Marseille, somehow out of nowhere, wanted to sign him as their 4th goalkeeper. Turns out his ex-teammate Ted Lavie had suggested him to them, and given the opportunity to sign him on a free deal and on a lower wage, they just said, why not? Let him come for a trial. Edouard, motivated by his family, who despite all the struggles still felt he could achieve all that he had dreamed of, went into the trial ready to give everything he had, to put all of his sweat, blood and tears into one training session. And by the end, they were very impressed. One of the coaches even said that he was in shock. He couldn't understand why no one wanted him. And just like that, he got his first professional contract at 24 years of age. Time for a second chance. Over that season, he played as the second-choice goalkeeper in their B team, still playing in the 4th tier despite the weight carried by the badge on his chest. But the opportunity of playing with some big names like Abu Dhabi, Batshuayi and Lassana Diarra was priceless. More than ever, Mendy now knew that this was the way to go, and so he decided to take a risk. Moving to Stade de Reims in the 2nd tier, hoping that at a smaller club maybe he would be given a shot at the first team at one point. At first, it must have been scary. He was already 25 and they only allowed him to play 8 matches over the first season, even being dropped to the B team at one point. But then, it paid off. A new manager arrived and offered him a spot in the first team. It was only a matter of holding on to it for dear life. And that's exactly what he did. By the end of the season, Reims had only conceded 24 goals in the league, the lowest of any team, and 64% less than the year before. The difference was apparent to everyone, and so was the difference maker. It was a 6'4" man with the reflexes of a jungle cat, who had just secured them a place in the top tier. But before that, something strange took place. Having triple nationality, France, Senegal, and Guinea-Bissau could all call him up. Guinea acted fast and even got him to play some friendlies, but as they called him up for the 2017 African Cup of Nations, he backed down, refusing to tie himself to them and hoping for a call-up to Senegal one day, a call-up that would come right at this very moment. Thanks to his steady hands, Hans would finish their season with only 9 defeats, 4 more than PSG and 4 fewer than Marseille, with 42 goals conceded, only bested by 3 teams in the whole league. With an attack that could barely produce a goal per game, an 8th place finish for Hans showed just how incredible Mendy had been. Over summer, he even got the opportunity to join the Senegal national team at the African Cup of Nations, where, despite not being the first choice keeper, he witnessed his team make the final, though they would lose to Algeria. From unemployment checks 2 years prior, Mendy was now the target of a 4 million bid by Rennes, which, of course, he would take. Right on his debut, he would save a penalty, and soon after, he would debut in the European competitions. Over the league season, though, he pushed it even further, making waves that would be noticed all across Europe. With 24 goals conceded, no club, not even PSG, had managed less. In fact, despite having scored less than half of the goals PSG had managed that season, Rennes had finished only 2 places below them, in third, qualifying for the Champions League for the first and only time in their history. It was evident who was behind this once again. Mendy was like a concrete wall, an outstanding goalkeeper who had somehow been kept a secret for long enough that he was already 28 years old. But it wasn't too late. On September 2020, Chelsea FC had grown increasingly frustrated with the performances of their world record signing, Kepa Arrizabalaga, an €80 million goalkeeper whose market value had dropped to a mere 15, making him the target of global mockery, with some arguing that he was the worst Premier League goalkeeper of all time, having at the time conceded 11 goals from the last 16 shots he had faced. So, at the recommendation of the legendary Petrochet, who sat at the opposite end of the spectrum, having once conceded only 13 goals in an entire Premier League season, Chelsea went in for Edouard Mendy, signing him from Rennes for €24 million. It would later be revealed that Shea had been watching him for years at that point, which is incredible to know after all that he had been through. When asked about all of this, Mendy said, "If someone had said this would happen to me 6 years ago, I wouldn't have even bothered to look at them." Which seems very likely, if once he had lived off of government benefits, he was now making £2.7 million a year. Regardless, once again, it all seemed so effortless for Mendy, who in his first 3 Premier League matches would keep 3 clean sheets, the first Chelsea goalkeeper to do that since who else but Petrochet. With 3 more clean sheets in the Champions League, Chelsea had managed 5 consecutive matches without conceding for the first time in a decade. The instant impact he had was absurd. By December, he had only conceded 4 goals in all competitions, and Chelsea were yet to lose, but then, out of nowhere, 8 matches would go by, conceding 12 goals, with only 2 victories coming from them, and manager Frank Lampard was sacked. Regardless, with new coach Thomas Tuchel taking over, Mendy would go on to concede only 1 goal in the next 11 games, making it past Atletico de Madrid with ease now that he was supported by a back 5 with 3 centre-backs and a more robust defensive system. Porto in the quarterfinals would follow the same route, though Chelsea would actually lose their first game after an incredible bicycle kick goal by Taremi caught Mendy off guard in the last minute of the match. In the semi-finals, now facing Real Madrid, Chelsea were going in as the underdogs. But after managing a draw at the Bernabeu, it would be the much-doubted Timo Werner who would put them in front as they eventually made the final through a 2-0 win at the Bridge, meaning they would only need to beat Man City to become champions of Europe. So, as destiny would have it, their next opponents in the league would be City themselves, and in what was almost like an anticipated Champions League final, Mendy rose to the occasion, saving a penalty by Agüero as Chelsea won the match. In anticipation for the UCL final, Tuchel left Mendy out of the next 2 matches, and Chelsea lost both of them, including the FA Cup final, which is just as many defeats as they had managed with Mendy on goal in the 5 months before that. Worries would only increase as in the last match before the final, Mendy fell on the frame of the goal and was forced to come out with a sharp pain in his ribs. As per usual, without him, Chelsea went on to lose that match as well. The fans and everyone at the club were in panic. The idea that their friendly giant could perhaps not be available for the final was a massive upset. But then he managed to pull through. On the 29th of May 2021, 2 years and 19 days since his last match in the second tier of French football, Mendy was Chelsea's biggest hope of conquering the greatest and most prestigious trophy in Europe. The hope of a perfect climax to his impossible story of rags to riches rested on these 90 minutes. Despite City dominating possession and constantly keeping the pressure on, Chelsea provided us with a defensive showing for the ages, being rock solid at the back and incredibly threatening going forward. With a single goal by Kai Havertz in the 42nd minute, it was confirmed. Edouard Mendy, who so far had only won a second division title, would now be able to add the Champions League trophy to his cabinet. Over that campaign, he had tied the record for most clean sheets in a Champions League campaign with 9 in 12 matches, conceding a mere 3 goals in over 18 hours of football. In the league, despite the third place finish, he conceded only 25 goals, the least out of any first choice goalkeeper. And if you exclude the 8-game run that led to Lampard's sacking, he would have only conceded 13 goals in 23 matches. Over the start of the next season, Mendy would win the European Super Cup, and it was undeniable that Mendy was one of the very best goalkeepers in the world. It was a very good shout to say that he was the best of them all. So imagine everyone's shock when in November the Ballon d'Or rankings come out and his name wasn't even on the list. Even as the Yashin Award for the best goalkeeper of the year was handed out, somehow Donnarumma beat Mendy to it. The outrage on social media was enough to clarify what had happened, if anyone was still doubting who was the best in the world. Donnarumma's performances in the Euros had overshadowed Mendy's performances over the full 12 months, which was only made more unfair by the fact that Mendy wasn't even able to take part in the competition, and he didn't keep quiet about it either. He ended up going on TV and saying, "If I had played for France instead of Senegal, would we even be having this debate?" Regardless, Mendy would keep going, making it to January as one of the most consistent goalkeepers in the world yet again. And once FIFA delivered their own version of the awards, there was finally some justice, as he was awarded the Goalkeeper of the Year award.